Yeah, let me just introduce myself. I'm Carsten Windler. I'm the head of development publishing something at the Holidaypirates GmbH. Probably somebody already heard of the Holidaypirates GmbH? Anyone? There's one. Great, thanks. So yeah, I was invited to talk a little bit about my experience with clean code in general and the web development world. So yeah, I'm a PHP developer and I like it. So are there any other PHP developers around here? Yeah. Okay, tough audience. Okay, that's what I like. So use the microphone. Can anybody hear me well? Okay. Yeah, great. So my talk is called The Lone Stranger, or Why You Can't Establish Clean Code on Your Own. So from my experience, I'll give you a little bit of a talk. So this is just an example. When you want to find bad code in the PHP world, you don't have to go far. It's actually around the corner. So this is a code from a very, very well-known blog system, which I won't name here. Okay, it's a bit mean to take such a code. I mean, yeah, I can even scroll down here. The function doesn't end at that point. So let's imagine you are on a project like this, and you have to work with that. What could you do? You could say, okay, I can accept my fate, live with it. I can try to refactor all by myself, or that's why we are here, can try to introduce clean code. And let's look at the alternatives. That's annoying me a little bit. Look at the alternatives. So yeah, accepting your fate is actually unprofessional for me. It will make you unhappy in the long term. So when you reach the state where you say, I want to introduce clean code, and you cannot, it's a bit difficult. When you try to refactor all by yourself, this will end up like the screen guy, where you say you try it, but the other developers will keep the code dropping because they don't understand what you're actually about to do. This will introduce also new bugs, because the code usually, at least the experience from the PHP world, is not very well tested when you have such a project. Not very well means no tests actually. And this will also lead to trouble actually with the other developers, because you keep changing their code and they're wondering what is he doing all the time and introduce new bugs and stuff. So actually the only answer that we have is, not really surprisingly, that we want to introduce clean code. Yeah, but how? I mean, we are in a project where everything is done already pretty, not so well. The code base is old, you have a lot of legacy code. So the good thing, I will tell you now exactly what to do to introduce clean code. It will just take 10 hours. No, just kidding. There's of course no such thing. Every project is very special. Every project has its own life. So what I want to tell you is how to introduce clean code, probably on your project if you have it. So before you start, you have to be aware that introducing clean code on a project which hasn't been done that way, it will take time. It will take a lot of time. It's painful for you, for others, for everybody probably. It's cumbersome. I can tell you from experience, it's really cumbersome, but it's totally worth it. In the end, everybody will be, I guess, happy with the results. So let's look first at the people you might need to convince. That's pretty obvious. The management. So you have to find some arguments to say, okay, we want to do differently, we want to start with clean code, refactoring, tests and everything. This will take more time. So we have to convince them. You have to convince your co-workers, because when they are not into clean code, you have to tell them what's actually so cool about it. Just saying, read that Uncle Bob book, it won't help. Probably you have to deal with other departments. This is not so important, but I just want to mention it. And this depends on what company you are. So if you have a small agency probably, and you have to deal with a customer, then you have to tell them why you want to change the coding. Okay, let's have a look at the arguments. But first I need some water. So for me, clean code is pretty much related with software quality in general. So we will borrow here and there some arguments from other software quality topics. So in order to convince the management, we have to explain them why you suddenly want to spend more time on doing the same than before. That's what they probably expect or what they see. So I thought, yeah, business likes charts, so let's try and give them some charts. So this is now, I thought about how to best measure the success of a project, or how to give at least some numbers, and I thought, okay, let's try it's a bit small, I guess. It's the number of backlog items which we have over time. So in the beginning, let's say we start from scratch, and we have a cool project, 300 backlog items, or it's just a number now, it doesn't matter. So in the beginning, everything works pretty well. Everyone is like hacking like a maniac, and one function after another, one controller after another is added to the project, everything's fine. Then after a while, the curve is not so steep anymore. It's like, things start to get tighter. It's like bugs are all the time. One changes, something is in this code, then bug pops up on the other side. And then something happens at this point, which we call life. It's just many changes that can happen. We have a technology change probably, requirements, or personnel change. So let's look at this a bit more in detail. In the PHP world, one of the worst things that can happen is that you have to update your framework. Of course, major versions. So if you have a framework, you worked pretty hard, pretty well with it, and you used it a lot, but then suddenly you have to update the framework because probably the end of lifetime is reached, or it's no longer supported for the PHP version which we are using. So framework update will cause pretty much a big pain. Language updates can happen in the PHP world also. It's not so bad, but it breaks stuff. So also this can cause problems. And probably you just have to change your infrastructure because of technical need. So imagine your project goes very well, everything's fine. You got more and more customers, and your infrastructure is not capable of it's not scaling anymore, it's not working. So you probably need to introduce new stuff, you need to use external services, you need to, I don't know, it's just things which need to be changed everywhere in the application. You can also have requirements changes. So management comes out with a new top feature, they read something about the cloud, and now they want to store data in the cloud and no longer on the FTP server, which worked well for 20 years for some reason, I don't know. So they want to change it, and if you have if this service, let's say the service is it's hard-coded everywhere, then you have a big problem. And also, of course, personal change, especially for small projects. When you have that one developer which is, he knows the code by heart. He is actually the code, he is the documentation, he's also QA everything. So the talk factor is how many people need to get hit by a truck until your project dies or until it gets really into trouble. So when this is your former lead developer, then you have a big problem, because then suddenly all the knowledge, all the experience from him is gone. Let's say it's not hit by a truck, but he just got a better offer from a different company, and that's it, he's gone, taking all the knowledge with him, and you're doomed. So when I looking at this chart, I sometimes see that this is like a roller coaster. So in the beginning, everything is going very well, but then at a certain time, suddenly it stops, the movement stops, all the passion is gone suddenly, because people realize, this code won't really work anymore. So let's look at it's a bit idealistic, I know. Let's look at this when we use clean code. We see, in comparison, the curve is probably not as steep as for the, let's say, sloppy code, but still it goes on well. And this technology change, or whatever we had here, doesn't cause such a big problem, because let's say we want to exchange, as I said, the example, let's say we want to exchange our storage with cloud storage, AWS or whatever, then if it's coded well, then it's a matter of changing configuration probably, and not touching all the code. So again, the roller coaster view, yeah, in the beginning it's nice, and oh, you got this little bump, wow, it's okay, nothing happened, no problem. So yeah, this is actually what we want to achieve by using clean code. When we compare now these two curves, we see these two areas here, and yeah, I call this a sloppiness short-term boost. Please don't Google it, that doesn't exist, I just made it up yesterday evening. So this is the advantage you get when you start a project without using clean code. It's just because you ignore so many things. You don't do any tests, you don't do any refactoring. So in the beginning, everything works pretty well until we hit the other side, and then this is what I call the clean code long-term benefit. Also, it's totally made up, so please don't look at us. Here we see that because we used clean code in the beginning, we were not as fast in the beginning probably as we could have been, but we just perform better now because we don't have so many problems in the end. Okay, things is, we have to consider the time a little bit here. This is what we could call the startup phase. So, yeah, the web, from the web development world. So for us, pretty much everything is a startup. So as you see here, we have the consolidation phase also. And when you speak for the business, in business terms, you could say that this is actually credit you take. You take a credit, you pile up technical debt. Oh, sorry. You pile up technical debt, and yeah, in the end, you have to pay back. Wait a second, folks. You have to pay back the debt with interest, of course. So stuff gets more and more expensive in the end. Still, you can maintain the project, but it takes so long. There's so many bugs, and it's just more and more getting expensive. So I also try to make up some mathematics. I'm not even sure if this is correct. If you want to correct me, please do it afterwards when you have the coffee. Just saying that in the beginning, in the startup phase, when we have fewer backlog items left when we do sloppy programming. However, when we look at the long term, then it looks differently. So then we have more backlog items left. So let's try to argue this way. So sometimes it's actually really a business decision to make that. What can you do when the business decides not to program like you want them to? Then you can do nothing. But sometimes it's also ignorance. So again, web development startups, they're often young developers, interns, doing great stuff, but they don't have the experience. How could they? I mean, I think nobody gets born a clean coder. You have to become a clean coder. Okay, but I think we shouldn't use this to talk to the business. It was just for you, like an example on how we can, how to get into the mindset. So let's talk. Let's convince the management why clean code matters. We have some facts which I would like to go through. Wait a second. So you should consider quality not as a bad thing, but as an investment. You shouldn't think short term. It's just that, of course, in the beginning, and especially when you have people who experience these startups, which, yeah, they did great stuff without testing, without anything, so why do we need it? Yeah, but where's the startup now? So the time will come where you have to change it. So don't think short term. It's a long-term investment. You don't want to scrap your project after 1 year or 2 years. Probably you want to if you have a big venture capital behind you. That's a different story. It's clear that future changes on platforms or requirements will be easier for you. So it's not only that your project is like it has a better quality. It's also prepared for future changes. And as I said, you avoid piling up the technical debt, which will bite you in the end. something, I also don't know if this actually exists, the terms developer scalability, but this is important that when your project grows, you need to add more developer to it. Like businesses like, okay, one developer takes 1 week to make this, so 2 developers will take half a week to make this, and so on. So can scale like you want. Now this is not the case, of course. You need to introduce developer, you need to, they need to learn the project. And it's easier to introduce someone to a project when it's well done. If it's not well done, of course it takes more time and also consumes time of the other developers. The gathered experience and techniques can be transferred to other projects, so once you start with a project somewhere, you can transfer it quite easily to other projects as well. And this lower per bug code, I think it's obvious, because when you catch a bug already in the development stage or on the, on the acceptance stage, then it's much cheaper, of course, than to fix a bug on the live stage. Why is it so? Yeah, because all the people involved, when the bug appears on live, you have people reporting, then you have to check. Everything takes much more time. So, preventing regressions with lab outage. I don't know how many people of you are here like working in the web business, but for us in the web business, a live outage is like, it's the worst thing that can happen, obviously. We don't earn money with that way. So live outage must be defeated at any time. We have a higher customer satisfaction because when you have a product which is buggy, it's probably not so, the reputation is not so well. So it improves the overall reputation of a project when it doesn't have so many bugs, or when you don't, with every release you introduce new bugs which haven't been there before. This is not good. So looking at the customer, this is a bit problematic probably. If you can, leave it to the management. Usually the developers are not talking to the customer directly, at least not on business things. So when you have a customer to convince, then leave it up to the management. I guess they're the better ones. Of course, this means you have to convince the management first. So we have to explain them why you want them to spend more money on getting the same results than before. Because in the first run, the development speed will decrease when you start introducing Keynote. That's I think also pretty obvious. So let's look at some arguments here. They're actually quite similar than for the management. So again, quality is an investment, and I think this is also for the customer it's very important. When he spends money on getting a project developed, and it's developed crappy, then it's no use. It's not really worth it. So you wouldn't buy a table which has like screws and nails showing out all the time. So you would rather, I guess, buy a decent product. Again, future changes on platforms and requirements will be easier. And one fact which you shouldn't tell this to the customer, but you can if you like. The customer, now saying again you're an agency, is lesser depending on your company. So in the past I had the fact that the company I worked in was like, it was so deep into the project that the customer had no chance to actually change the company. So because all the knowledge was in that company, probably for the company that's good probably, but for the customer it's a bad thing. Yeah. Oops. And again, the end customer satisfaction, here the same. You have a more stable product, happier customers, better reputation, lesser outages, so it's good for your business if you do things right. This is a bit from the agile world. I copied it a bit from there. Of course, you can start and say, okay, so our code base is much better than before, and when that is, you can introduce new features easily. So you can, if you have an idea, it won't take like 2 months until we get the next release. We can release much easier, much faster. So let's try, we try a new feature, we evaluate with A/B tests how it works, and then we can say if we develop this further or we scratch it again. So I guess these are a couple of arguments which can be used. Okay, now the co-workers, your fellow developers. Now you have to explain why you want them to spend more time on doing the same stuff than before. Yeah, it's always the same discussion. So if the developers which are in your company, they are not used to writing tests, for example, they are not used to refactoring just because you want to improve code, then it's probably hard to convince them, because yeah, everything is working. You see the output. It's why should I change this class over and over again? There are some factors which we could have a look at. Here I call this happy refactoring, because when you have clean code already, or your code is at least tested, you can this gives you much more confidence when you refactor something. So actually, you will refactor more when you can. So in the past, I had all these classes where I said, "Oh, better not touch it; it will break something." So you had a really, really bad class, like thousands of lines of code. This really happens, and but you don't dare to touch it because it's used everywhere, and you don't have tests. Yeah, so it's probably there forever. Clean code saves time. So for me, as I said, clean code is pretty much related to software quality in general, and also tests are. So when you use automated tests, you can save a lot of time. Let's say you have a feature which you are working on, which appears in the dialog, which is after the 3rd page or the 4th page, and you have to click all the time to the application to test that small feature. It costs a lot of time. So when you can get the chance to test the class directly, only using, let's say, unit tests, then you are much faster than always clicking through. And one thing about, that's a bit, now I'm taking the test part here. It's easier to solve a problem or a bug when you just found it than when you found it after, like, weeks after when you work on that topic. So then you're already, with your mind, you're already again on totally new topics. But when you find the bug immediately, then it's much easier to solve. So in the end, you save time. It's an ego thing. Many developers I know do have strong egos. So when bugs get discovered by others, it's embarrassing for them. So at least when it's these kind of really, really stupid bugs that I fixed it 3 times now, why does it appear again? So this is something, I guess, you can speak to the ego of the developer. And one thing which is also nice, the project or even the developer reputation inside the company increases. So the business sees, oh, right, the guys are doing lesser bugs, the project is more stable. Yeah, this is good. This is good for your ego, this is good for your reputation. Lesser stress during deploys. In one of my former companies, we had I worked in, I didn't own them, of course. In the former companies we worked in, we had these big bang releases where you had, like, you worked 3 months on features, then you put it live in the night, and then late night at 2 o'clock, you found out there was a big mistake, some migration on the database failed, and then you were really, really stuck. So when you know that your code is tested very well, and is written very well, then you can deploy with confidence. And here again, the developer scalability. So now the other side, a new developer comes to your team, and he needs to be integrated. So everyone's like, oh no, I have so much to do, I have so much tickets, I cannot just work with this guy half a day. And so actually when the code base is good, then it's easier to integrate with your colleague. So it will also help developer and the team to be more productive. So in the end, we want to turn the developers from this gray, disparate guy into relaxed developers. I don't know if he even has Wi-Fi here, and actually I wanted to have a rainbow over there, but my Photoshop skills are not so good. So please imagine the rainbow here. So this is ideally, of course, where we want to go. So what can we do to get developer on our side? First, I think it's important that you really live what you mean. So you cannot just say, yeah, guys, introduce clean code, yeah, okay, no, right. So you have really to be convincing, you have to, yeah, probably you have to take some time, speak about this topic again and again, get the other guys some time to get comfortable with the situation that you're about to change something. Then you should provide good examples on the project. So when I started with testing, for example, yeah, I always found these calculator examples for unit tests. So I said, yeah, okay, I test a function which adds two numbers. This is ridiculous. But how do I test code which has a database in background or which has external services? And never found any really good tutorials about that. So when you want to introduce clean code, and this means you want to refactor the existing code, you have to set up good tests. And this means that you have to provide some examples. You could do in-house workshops. It's generally a good idea. So that you not only say, go ahead, do it, but you do some workshops and you show probably what you could do better and why. I think at this point it's important that you are not so, you don't come off, it's not so arrogant. So arrogance is usually not so nice. You should find allies. This means probably you have one or two developers which are already also interested in clean code somehow. At least you found them in the free time working on tests or something. So these are the right guys to ally with, to form together forces and to try to convince the other developers. And last but not least, and this is very important, you have to provide the tools. So this is the second part now. After all this argumenting stuff, we can have a look which tools actually can help us to introduce clean code, software quality in general, on an existing project. This is always important. I'm always talking about existing projects here. So even in PHP we have nowadays code style guides. This means, so in the past everyone was like just hacking, like he was thinking about, not really caring about variable length or where to put the brackets and stuff. So code style guides, they improve the readability for other developers. And for me it's just a matter of professionalism that you use code style guides. So it's actually you shouldn't discuss it, but still there are some which you have to discuss. And code style guides are very easy to introduce. So actually modern IDEs, they help you on showing you where code is not correctly formatted. They help you on reformat the code automatically. So there's a lot of stuff which can help you. Also you could use, you should use existing code standards. Of course you can make up your own. For PHP, for example, we have PSR2, which you could use. The good thing about using existing code standards is that the tools already support them. You don't need to build any XML files with rule definitions or something. You also have code sniffers, which will check any violations against these rules. And even better, you can use code sniffers to reformat automatically some code. So as you see here on this example, this is a lot of stuff that happens when you develop on a Windows and then on a Linux system. These line endings, we have like violations, opening brace should be on a new line. This is stuff which is a bit nasty, but this can be easily refactored, reformatted by the tool. So what you should do is, of course, when you want the developer to change all code immediately, this will not work. So you should rather run these code sniffers on pre-commit and only on files which you changed. So, which the developer changed. So, of course, when the developer has a big file to change, bit bad luck, but you have to start somewhere. And exactly. So it's easier to not reformat the whole code base. Also, of course, when you reformat the whole code base, probably there's still a bug in this reformatting stuff, and you will get errors. Software metrics. It's another topic. Now you see this impressive thing with this, all these code words and whatever. What I see now, I see a lot of red stuff. a lot of yellow stuff. Actually, the code base doesn't seem to be so good. But what can I really do with that? So, what can I do with these numbers? Actually, they are very good for just code, just talking amongst colleagues, and you show, yeah, how cool my project actually is. No, of course not. This is not what we need software metrics for. Although we could do it if you like. We could also, it's not too visible, I'm sorry. We could also draw wonderful diagrams. For me, this is already almost art. These diagrams are interactive, so if you select some class here, you see the relations on other files. So you can immediately see if there are files which are really, which are used probably everywhere. So these are the files where you have to be extremely cautious. You can draw these nice bubble diagrams. Again, it gives you a rough overview, but probably not everything is so good in your code. I think this also will make up great t-shirts. So probably it's a nice idea. You project on a t-shirt before and after. Then you can say my project 2016 and my project 2018. Let's see how this works. Of course, this is not the real purpose of these bubble diagrams. You can hover with the mouse, and you would see. You would hover over the mouse, and you would see immediately some code metrics. Again, on this bigger project, it's probably, it doesn't help us so much. But when we look at a smaller package, everything is, it's okay, but there's probably one thing on this chart where you say, I could probably change something. Yeah, it's pretty easy. It's refactoring time of this class. So this is, I guess, where these tools help you quite a lot. What they don't do, they don't tell you why your code is so bad. So they tell you that your code is bad, and you could say, okay, I know that, I knew that before, thanks for telling me, but why? I need advice. I need to make it better. So, as I said, the software metrics will show you how good or how bad your code base actually is, but they will not tell you what exactly was wrong. However, they make the developer a little bit more aware of software quality in general. That's I'm pretty much thinking. And it helps you identify problem areas. But in order to really find out what is bad in the code exactly, we have we can use source code analyzers, which will tell you on which line of your code something is not good, on which line of your code something could be improved. We also could use copy-paste detectors to hit the fingers of the lazy developers who are just copy and pasting stuff around. Yeah, it shouldn't be done, but still, we all see that it's done. And the good thing about source code analyzers, when you run them again on the pre-commit, you prevent bad code from getting added to your code. So this is a little bit, depends on how you set it up. You could even say that the commit is not accepted when the source code analyzer finds any problems. This is pretty harsh, but you can do it. So this is an example report of PHP-MD, which is the PHP world version of PMD. It just shows you, static access to this shouldn't be done. You can even configure weird rules like don't use else expressions. I think this can be negotiated, but still you can configure to make an alarm, or you can say the Boolean flag in the constructor. This is pretty much a sign that the single responsibility is not met here. The principle is violated. So this is actually quite good. These tools give you really good feedback and they help you learn. I cannot do this here now, but you could actually click on one of the links and then you get some explanations. What is behind this? So it's not only this product sentence, only you get help. However, no tool will make you a better programmer automatically. So, hence, I would say you will always have to learn. You should never stop learning. So whenever I think, I know PHP pretty well, and I'm probably not the baddest programmer around, then I find a new package or a new developer where I say, wow, okay, I have to learn more, and it's amazing how much you can learn. or you have to learn. In this topic, you could also use code reviews. It's, again, very easy to introduce, assuming you use version control systems. This is fast in the web development, of course. There's no way around it anymore. For me, it's actually a must-have, because with code reviews, so you have one developer should review the code of another developer. So whenever you're done with a feature, it's not automatically put into the code base. You first have someone who looks over it. And this can prevent really nasty bugs, because there are things that even the best source code analyzer will not find. Probably security issues, or when some developer is doing actually the same stuff than a class that already exists. Of course, this ideally he should have known before, but yeah, sometimes this happens. So you can at least say, look, we have this class already, don't continue working on this. And this is great for sharing knowledge amongst the team. Again, here, I think it's very careful, that you have to be careful, especially when you have young developers. Don't be so arrogant in doing code reviews, not just doing, yeah, that's crap here, don't repeat yourself and anything, you don't know that? No, some people probably don't know, so give them the chance to learn. And code reviews should be probably done, you have to, how can I say, you have to keep in mind with whom you are doing the code review. Some are probably okay when you just add some comments here and there in the merge request, you say, yeah, please have a look at this, or even change this. For some it's okay, but some rather would have eye-to-eye reviews. It depends probably pretty much on the personality of the developer you're working with. So this is one of the most important topics. It's been a while in PHP since people realized that tests are actually a good thing. So I want to reuse this well-known phrase here a little bit, and I would say keep it tested, stupid. So tests for us are not optional anymore, they are mandatory. And we mean it, and we mean it seriously. So when you introduce clean code, you have to introduce tests, otherwise you are not able to refactor. And so make sure that tests are introduced. So in the ideal world, we would write code, we could run our automated tests, we check if everything is fine, then we refactor, then we check if everything is fine. Oh, well, nice, works fine. But what if we have no unit tests yet? So this is a harsh reality on a lot of projects. You write your code, you refactor, and then you run into bugs. And that's it. So what can you do? Of course, you can do manual testing. But I think, yeah, being a developer myself, I know that I have this ideal click path through an application. So I don't click left or right, I just click to the point where my code is, and I don't dare to look at anything else because I fear, and deep in my heart, I fear I could have broken something. So, yeah, the manual testing is not really an option. So what do we have? Writing tests for untested classes usually requires refactoring. So you cannot just say, okay, then let's add unit tests to existing classes. Yeah. You have to refactor without tests, so this is risky, and this is actually a chicken-egg problem. How do you introduce tests without refactoring? But you need tests to make proper refactoring. So here you have to be very careful. And probably, for the beginning, you should concentrate on unit tests for new classes only. And so when your project, of course, the project still develops, it still grows, and you will introduce new classes, so probably you should start there. If you want to still want to test unit legacy code, you should start with some easy classes, of course. I guess it's pretty obvious. So again, here it's important for giving the other developers examples on how to test classes. So this is also well known, the test pyramid. I used a very reduced version of it. For my needs, it's okay. So let's say actually the foundation is unit tests, which are not available yet. Manual tests are not an option. There are these kind of exploratory tests where you just take 1 hour and click through the application with no real target, just try to find random bugs. This is of course something different. but for day-to-day development, we could probably use end-to-end testing. Now, end-to-end testing has some drawbacks. It's slow. Yeah. The web development, we use headless browsers running on some virtual machines, and yeah, this is slow, but it works. It's a bit fragile. This means when you have your cool front-end guys who are changing the front-end all over and over again, and sometimes you have to, in order to find the right button to click on, in order to find the right input field, you have to use classes to navigate with the DOM. If this changes all over again, then it gets really, really nasty. There are ways around it. For acceptance tests, you could use page objects where you encapsulate the UI in certain classes which make tests easier, so it's okay. Usually it also requires some sort of test mode. I mean that if you want to do acceptance tests, this means that you test the whole system. So ideally you should put the system in some sort of test mode where you say, okay, I have a fixed database which I use for all the tests, so I can be sure that, let's say, the blog post entry I posted, it's always the same. So I can really check, ideally, if the image is there and everything is there. Oops. However, there are some good sides on end-to-end tests. They require no refactoring because you don't touch the code base. They require no deep code knowledge, which is good. So even someone who's not experienced with the code base can write end-to-end tests. And this can be done in the same amount of time. Of course, it takes some time, but after like 1 or 2 months, you already get a quite good code coverage and test coverage. So I would say this is probably the way to go before you start this refactoring. So you first set up a couple of end-to-end tests, and then you make at least sure that your project doesn't break totally when you start with refactoring. Workflows. So obviously we have all the tools now. If we don't use them, if we don't control them, they're nothing. So this is borrowed somewhere, this slogan. So you should set up clearly documented workflows. There must be a place for developers to look up how they should do stuff. And you have to be stubborn. You really have to say, okay, guys, remember there's the wiki entry. Please do this and that, because developers, they smell your fear, they smell your weakness, and they will try to put the sloppiness back into the code. So actually, the best things, we should automate all this stuff. So this is, I hope I spelled it correctly, continuous integration. It's always a hard word for me to spell. So what could we do? Whenever a developer is done with this feature and he wants to merge into the code, you directly run continuous integration, and you directly run a couple of tools with the code. You run the code sniffer, the source code analyzer, you run the tests, and in the last you run the acceptance tests because they take the longest time. And if some rules are violated, then the code is not merged. Simple as that. Yeah. And the good thing about having machines testing your code is when the computer says the code is not correct, and you say, all right, yeah. But when the other developer says that your code is not correct, then I don't like that guy anyway. He's not a good developer anyway. So better let the machine criticize your code. In the end, we can also produce nice reports. The software metrics, for example, the test coverage, any other reports. We started with, in my company, we started with putting big screens on the wall where we have like these test software metrics, and we have the test runners where we can see what happens. We can immediately see when the code fails, and there's a big red bar on the TV. And this gives some more interactivity. It's probably not so important, but it's a nice feature. So, after all talking, what's left? Clean code is not about being the best coder in the world, I would say. It's about professionalism, of course. Although you have to be pretty good to do clean code. As I said, you are not born a clean coder. Clean code is about professionalism, yeah. I hope everybody agrees. So when you call yourself a professional, you should use clean code. Otherwise, actually, you are not professional. Clean code is about knowing that sloppy code will cost a lot of money. And clean code is about being proud of your code. I think this is very important. When you have code which, after a hard working day, and you look at it and you say, oh, this class looks nice actually, it's really good. Then you are proud of your code, you're proud of your work and your job. And for me, it's probably the best job in the world, that's why I'm here. And yeah, thank you everybody for your attention. I hope you like it a little bit. Alright, so we've got a couple of minutes left. Are there any questions, remarks, anything you want to add? I know it's still before 10, quite early for most of the developers, so probably you haven't had enough coffee yet. But if you have any questions now, you can ask them. Otherwise, I'm happy to talk with you in the breaks for a coffee or two. Yeah, there's a question.
You said that it's not possible to test code without refactoring.
Yeah, usually. So of course there might. So I was talking about unit tests first of all. Yeah, from my experience, usually you write code without having tests in your mind. You write code with hard dependencies. So suddenly you have a hard dependency in your code. You instantiate another service in your code which you cannot mod. Then it's really hard to test. That's what I'm doing. So in order to get this dependency out of the class, you have to refactor the class, and then you put introduce bugs. Sorry? Yeah, okay. Let's say, yeah. Okay.
And back to your curve with a roller coaster way,
yeah.
I think, well, first you say it takes a lot of time before you introduce clean code.
Yeah.
And this is true, because you introduce clean code and mostly you don't have any outcome in this period, but your curve says immediately going down. I think you must be honest enough to say the curve will stay a long while to the level of your output.
The curve, of course, was, but you're totally right, but you were saying that the curve represents a project where I start immediately with a team which is good on clean coding and everything. Yeah, so I just wanted for the management for them to see the difference. You have to exaggerate a little bit, but yeah, you're totally right.
But this is one of the main issues because the people don't believe it because they know before this is a goal in 2 years. The curve will be like that.
Yeah.
But we don't have 2 years' time to achieve that. This is the discussion we have to have.
Yeah, totally. I totally agree. And sometimes even there are companies who don't see the need of doing this. But as I said, this is the technical debt which you pile up.
I know.
At a certain time, your project is just dying literally because nobody wants to work on it anymore. So.
I may also have an answer to that.
Yeah.
I think the important question is where is this point when the curve changes? And in my experience, it's not like 2 years; it's more like 3 weeks. So.
Yeah, it depends on the project. Yeah, a very good example, because for me in the PHP world is the Typo 3 project, which really started with it had a lot of ugly code. What they did, and because they realized the code was so bad, they started refactoring it all over slowly, and for a couple of releases nobody saw any changes, but they changed so much in the background. This was really impressive. So now they got the code on a really good level, and yeah, just an example. Okay, some other questions? Yes?
Just a little remark. You mentioned software metrics as a good helper, but I would say from my experience, it doesn't really help. And I think in our company it's just abandoned because it's kind of virtual measurement, because it doesn't answer the doesn't answer the question what is actually clean code.
Yeah.
So how do you describe and how do you define the clean code? And I'd say the main and the most certain answer here is testability.
Okay.
say.
Yeah.
Just
Yeah, I'm also with the software metrics, I'm also not so so fond of, but still I think they help us find problem areas. As you saw in that one example, this was a really very good example where you saw one big red area where you have a problem, and it gives you hints. It doesn't say it doesn't turn your code automatically into clean code, but it gives you hints where you can have a look at. There was another question over there. No.
More like a remark. We were talking about the chart, and you said that you made up the names for it. There is Martin Fowler has a few articles on something he calls the design stamina hypothesis, and it's exactly what you explained.
Yeah. I think it's pretty obvious. The thing I put up. I'm not done with all the Fowler books yet.
Yeah. So if you're interested in that, read about design stamina hypothesis.
Yeah, I will look it up. Thanks.
And yeah. And the other thing is that there is this really nice book by Michael Feathers, working effectively with legacy code. You know that?
I heard about it, but I haven't read it.
Yeah. So it's all about how you can break dependencies, do write tests really safely. Now the problem is, of course, you're a PHP developer just like me, so we are basically screwed. We don't have a type system to save us from things. But those of you who are lucky enough to work with, well, lucky. In some sense it's better, in other sense it's not better, but those of you who work with statically typed languages, the Michael Feathers book is a really good source because he uses the type system as a kind of test for preliminary refactors.
With PHP 7 we get in the right direction.
Sorry?
With PHP 7 we get in the right direction. So I guess PHP 7, PHP tries to move away from this.
It will still be optional, so probably.
Of course, yeah.
It's not the same.
You can just change this from one release to another. Yeah.
But I must say that I personally think that it's better to work with dynamic typing as long as you have a clean code. But with legacy code, of course, type system is a really good help.
Okay, thanks. Okay, so I guess that's it. Yeah, I'm still around here for today, and unfortunately I cannot stay so long. Yeah, so thank you very much. I hope we can learn a lot here in these 2 days, or 1 day for me at least. Thank you for the attention. It was quite an honor for me to have the opening keynote. It was actually the first time I had a speech on a conference ever, so I hope it wasn't that bad. Thank you very much.
Okay, that's no problem. Because we will have a presentation of them. What link is it to? Well, we'll work on it. If it does, that's okay. Otherwise, you can use my lab.
Can I use yours? Because I actually
Okay, so no problem. If you want to do it now, oh, I see.
just realized about my laptop. I was in my bag.
Ja, ist der.
Wir sehen uns später. Wir haben wieder die Informationen. Du
Was du machst.
Ja.
Genau.
Informatik. Und was machst du jetzt?
Momentan
nach Ferien. Okay, nee, ich meine jetzt als Studium.
Okay.
Auch Informatik. Wo? Noch mehr?
Ja, ich bin heute was oben.
Ich war in Bochum. Ja, aber den ist angewandte Informatik, das ist sehr naturwissenschaftlich orientiert und wenig Software-lastig. Von daher, ich habe vorher einen Bachelor in Informationstechnik an der FH gemacht, das war deutlich informatiklastiger, muss ich sagen. Also deutlich softwarelastiger. Ja. Und dann habe ich halt hier angerufen und gesagt, ich habe jetzt noch ein bisschen Zeit, bevor mein Job losgeht. Die Studenten gäbe es in die Kondition, da hat er gesagt, ja, wenn du einen Tag Moderation machst, dann kannst du das.
Aber mir war es ähnlich. Ich habe auch mal angeschrieben und das ist echt ein super Angebot.
Ja, auf jeden Fall.
Das mit dem Soundsystem?
Ja,
Also sie meinte gestern, dass...
ist eigentlich ziemlich easy. Du hast halt hier die Dingens. Auf der Innenseite ist der Einschalter.